Hello. Well, first let me say led by the President, the Democrats are in full retreat on the D.C. Criminal law issue. Washington is different from any other city in America. Our constituents come here, our staff lives here, all of you live here. We need to have a reasonable expectation of security here in the Capitol. And I think what was tried by the D.C. City Council is a correct time for federal intervention to protect our constituents and our staff. With regard to the presentation on Fox News last night, I want to associate myself entirely with the opinion of the chief of the Capitol Police about what happened on January 6th.
Well, there isn't hardly a day goes by here in this city when there isn't a violent crime. And if you look at this year already, there have been 99 carjackings, and the number of cars stolen is double what it was this time a year ago. And it's not just car theft. Violent crime is up 25% year over year here in Washington, D.C. And this is an issue that cries out for a solution. And I think that anybody who, as the leader said, works here, lives here, visits here, would like to have a community that is safe. And this isn't just unique to Washington, D.C. From cities across this country, from New York to Seattle, you see particularly a lot of our populated areas around the country are experiencing this same wave of crime as a result of soft on crime policies. And so this has got to stop. We have a constitutional authority, legislative authority here over the District of Columbia, and we're going to exercise that this week. As the leader pointed out, the resolution that will be on the floor here very soon tomorrow is one that I think will enjoy broad bipartisan support, because the Democrats have recognized what we all know and what the American people know, and that is that you can't continue to have policies where politicians basically put politics ahead of public safety, where you've got prosecutors who are not putting people away, and an environment that is permissive and encourages this type of criminal activity in a lot of our major cities across this country. So we're going to make that statement tomorrow, and again, I believe it will be a big bipartisan vote, and it should be, because the message needs to be sent clearly to the American people that policymakers here in Washington, D.C., that their elected officials get this and understand how important it is that there be a strong response to the wave of crime that's been experienced across this country, and that we intend to do something about it, starting with Washington, D.C.
Over the weekend, I was able to get out and about across Iowa. I was able to do a meeting with the Sheraton Chamber of Commerce and small business owners. I did a farm bill roundtable with a number of stakeholders that were interested in conservation. So a number of activities, and hearing from Iowans. In particular, at the town hall that I did in Jasper County, there was one constituent that stepped up and said he felt like the big hands of government were all over Middle America. And he's not wrong, folks. If we look at this administration and their overly burdensome regulations that are being pumped out from so many of our federal agencies, we would understand the feelings of this individual and many of the other folks that came out to the town hall. You can see it in whatever the Democrats and President Biden are doing. Everything from the waters of the United States being pushed out by our EPA, all the way over to politicizing individuals' retirement accounts. There are so many regulations out there that are impacting everyday Americans' lives, and they're tired of it. They are very tired of it. And so it's good to see that finally some of the Democrats that are here in our Senate chambers are starting to wake up to the pressures that this administration is putting on our daily American lives. I just continue to encourage our Democratic colleagues to step up, take a look at what these burdensome regulations are doing to their constituents, and join us in a number of pushing back with these CRAs. So again, overly burdensome regulations out there. It's putting too much pressure on Middle America.
I want to kind of piggyback on what Joni was saying about overburdensome regulations. I'm ranking member on Environment and Public Works. I have 49 Republicans on a measure to take down this administration and the EPA's Waters of the U.S. Regulation that they put out. And we are looking to our friends over on the House side who passed a Congressional Review Act to take that regulation down. They passed it out of committee last week. We're expecting them to pass it out on Friday out of the full House, and we will have it on the floor here on the following week. So several of you have asked me, and I expect it to pass on the Senate floor. Well, the president has issued a notice of veto. And so why do this? I said, well, first of all, is he going to stick by what he says? We don't know. We saw what happened last week or this week. And so I think that's a logical question. The second reason is because it's the right thing to do. They are rewriting laws. There's a pending court case at the Supreme Court right now that's going to make a lot of the determinations. But they couldn't wait for that. They had to redesignate waters that had never been designated waters of the U.S. It hurts farmers, ranchers, developers, miners, anybody who wants to expand their footprint. It will make much more regulatory burden on the folks that Joni met with last weekend, and all the way from the individual all the way to larger entities. So this, again, I think is the voice of the majority. The voice of the majority of the representation here in the United States Senate and House, reflecting the country in its entirety, is going to tell the president, stop with the overregulation, the overburdensome rules that you put forward, and let's get back to some reasonable, accomplishable rules and regulations so we can move forward. Thanks.
When I'm back home in Montana, the top concern I hear about is fentanyl, drugs flooding across from the southern border into states like Montana. I also hear a lot about inflation, the price of gas, the price of groceries. Montanans are feeling the consequences, certainly, of Bidenflation. But another direct consequence, as we heard today in the Banking Committee when Chairman Jay Powell was before us, is this reckless spending that we saw unleashed by the Democrats over the last 2 years is causing inflation and now the soaring cost of servicing our national debt. In February, the CBO updated their next 10-year forecast, and over the next 10 years, the dollars spent by the federal government on servicing the debt, on interest, will exceed the total dollars spent on defense. I remember when I was first running for the U.S. House back in 2012, I remember quoting the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Mullen, who back then said, and I quote, "The most significant threat to our national security is our debt." I think he was prophetic, because this gets us into trouble as China is increasing defense spending every single year and strapping our future generations with loads of debt is irresponsible, it's dangerous, it is a threat to our national security. We need to bring back fiscal sanity to Washington, D.C.
Given that you agree with the Capitol Police's very serious concerns about the release of this footage, was it a mistake by Speaker McCarthy to give access to Tucker Carlson of this security footage?
My concern is how it was depicted, which is a different issue. Clearly, the chief of the Capitol Police, in my view, correctly describes what most of us witnessed firsthand on January 6th. So that's my reaction to it. It was a mistake, in my view, for Fox News to depict this in a way that's completely at variance with what our chief law enforcement official here at the Capitol thinks.
Mr. Leader, if that's the case, following up on what you said, Tucker Carlson has already teased another round of videos that are going to be released today. I understand that you're upset with the way that Fox is depicting it, but he's been forecasting this for months, asking for this access to this footage to have a presentation just like this. Was it a mistake for the speaker to hand that?
You guys know I have many faults, but one of them is not answering the question in a way that I don't want to answer it. I've given you the answer.
Why do you think there are some within your party who don't want to acknowledge January 6th as an attack or an insurrection?
Shall I give you the same answer again? Anybody want to ask me something different?
Do you have any reaction to President Biden proposing a 5% Medicare surtax to extend the solvency of Medicare?
Well, you know, the president's budget is replete with what they would do if they could. Thank goodness the House is Republican. Massive tax increases, more spending, all of which the American people can thank the Republican House for, will not see the light of day.